but I will go ahead and start. For those of you who are here, thank you for being on time. And we'll start this webinar on time. And for those of you who have not been to our presentations before, my name is Valentina Kuskova. I am the academic supervisor of the Master of Data and Network Analytics program on Coursera, which is a mirror of a program called Master of Applied Statistics with Network Analysis. This program opened actually almost 5 years ago, and it's the program that was very different from anything offered in data analysis in the past. And precisely because it put a lot of emphasis on network analysis and used a lot of applied methods for working with data. And it is my pleasure to introduce you today to Ms. Elizaveta Chernenko. She is a PhD student at Oxford, and she is joining us from Oxford. And so she will be talking about what she does with network analysis and all the advances that network analysis allows us to do. She's the graduate of our program, so we're very proud to have her not only become the PhD student at Oxford, but also become the faculty member of this program. She is currently teaching a couple of classes in the course called Business Analytics, Diversity of Business Applications. You're welcome to check it out. It's offered right now as free course on Coursera and as part of a specialization called Business Analytics with Networks, so Networks for Business Analytics. So you're welcome to check out those courses, take them for free, or acquire a specialization. But I will turn the floor to Lisa and allow her to tell you more about the wonderful world of business networks. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you so much, Valentina, for this introduction. Indeed, my name is Lisa Chernenko. Let me just start the presentation. Please let me know whether these slides are seen here. Can you see it?
Yes, everything is fine.
Perfectly. So my specialization is business application of network analysis. And today I will give a short introduction into this area. And since I guess that the audience today might be very diverse, I try to do that as simple as possible, as interactive as possible. I hope you will enjoy it. But before we start, since we've already introduced ourselves, may we ask also you to introduce yourself? At least let us know, please, in the chat, just using one word, write one word. Where are you joining us from? So that we know who is with us today. Just one short line in the chat, if possible. Where are you joining us from? Moscow, Boston, Ireland, cool, California, USA, St. Petersburg. Wow, that's really inspirational. India, Mumbai, St. Petersburg, such a diverse audience. Kenya, I'm really, really inspired by New York, Croatia. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Sweden, so many different places. We are all now together. So let me just see. Oh. Yeah, now I got it. So I'm going to talk about network analysis and specifically its application to organizational management. So first, when we are asked to think about the structure of connection between employees, usually we would think about the formal organizational structure, the vertical hierarchical one. But if we think of how actually information flows, how opinions is shared and how decisions are done, usually we would observe that the structure of connections is just different. So on the right, you now see the example of how the actual informal social structure might look like. So in this diagram, every circle is a person, is an employee, every line is some kind of relationship between them. This picture is actually from my own practice. So this is connection between real people. And position of an employee within this network tells a lot, tells the whole story about his or her role within the organization, and the structure of the whole network actually may tell us about how efficient the procedures are and what can be done better about that. But before we proceed, and I give you several illustrations, what other examples of networks do you know? Like whatever example that comes to your mind, it might not be related to even people, not necessarily social. Grasslands. Well, frankly speaking, I don't know what it means, but any other examples? So what else might represent a structure social network? Actually, the network between employees is social. What else might represent a network? It might be actually physical, not necessarily, it might be virtual, it might be connection between different kinds of objects. Whenever we have some set of objects and they are connected by certain number of links, which is might be different for different nodes, different circles within this structure. Okay, let me just provide you with some more examples because I think this is interesting. Oops. Oh my God, I'm sorry for that. Maybe you heard these, the sound, but here are some different examples of networks that we actually observe in everyday life. So social network is one example, but also the network of how different animals feed on each other, bibliographic network, network of citations. Internet is the network between readers, and World Wide Web is network between websites, which also connect to each other. Power grid is the network between power generators, trade networks, transport networks. And in biology, also we have different networks, including the network in our brain, network between neurons. So the laws under which this structure, the network structure is how do you say, is actually realize itself is a universal and might be applied to absolutely different areas in our life. So let me give you another example. This is the example of social network structure. And now I need your opinion. Please look at this network and tell us, just try to think of who is the most influential, who is the most important in this network, and try to think of different kinds of social influence or social capital. But now I will ask you to provide your answer, not in the chat, because in the chat we won't be able to actually analyze that. But here, just please go to telsi.ru and enter the code MDNA, which is the abbreviation for our online master's program, and you'll see the question of who is the most important in this network. And please choose everyone, everything that applies, everyone who you think has the most influence in the network. I will also put it here, like telsi.ru, and the code is MDNA. Let me stop sharing for a second because I will look at the answers that you are providing. Oh, let me just give a second. I'll just see whether answers are arriving. Yes, answers are arriving. So I will wait for some more answers and for you to being able to look at it somewhat longer. So I will wait for another probably, oops, I'm sorry about that. 10 seconds, some 10 seconds looking more in this network. So please choose everyone who you think has the most social influence within this network. Try to think of different mechanisms of social influence. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's just look at the results. I will share the screen where I see your answers. Okay, Gabriella was an, you see that other answers are just arriving, is an absolute champion here. And then Carl, David, Diana, Irving, and others have got less nominations. So let me just check Gabriella. Okay, Carl, Great, you've been able to recognize between centrality and David. David's and, oh, okay, in between this. Diana and Irvin. Okay, I see that you've recognized at least 3 different kinds of social influence. Now let's discuss what are those. So let's come back to our presentation. So the reason why everyone recognized that Gabriella is the most influential is that because she has got the highest number of links. That is what we call degree centrality. In this network, she's the most central in terms of the largest number of connections. But also many have recognized the role of David and Carl, because they lie on many paths between other people within this network. So actually, if you're trying to reach, if you are in the left part of the network and you are trying to reach someone on the right part of the network, there is no way for you to do that, but to address to Carl, David, Gabriella, to them. So that's why they are important as brokers in this network. So they provide bridging. But it is also important to actually have access to different people. So another measure of social influence or social capital is the access to other people. This is what we call closeness centrality. And this measures how easy it is for you to access more or less everyone within this network. And with this respect, everyone who is in the just visual center of this network, Gabriella, Diana, Irving, and Carl and David, are all have got the maximum scores here. But it is also important, not only how many connections you have, but how influential are those with whom you're connected. And with this respect, okay, Gabriella is an absolute champion here, but as you might see, some people who are connected to her, especially if they're connected between each other, so they have several paths to the most influential person in the network, they also have got bigger size. So this is another type of social influence, being connected to socially influential others. And finally, no one actually, maybe very few, I didn't really check it properly, but very few identified another type of social capital, which is being socially embedded. If your friends are also friends to each other, this means that you are embedded in a very stable social structure, which may be beneficial to everyone, because usually this is the indication of trust, of information sharing, etc. So this is also the type of social capital. So what I wanted to tell you, giving you this illustration, is that network structure allows you to measure social capital, social influence, to identify who is who within the network, which is very useful in not only in management, but okay, in management and consulting as well. So as you have just seen, visually, networks speak to us. They tell you this story, and therefore it is important to be able to speak this language, just to understand what the networks can actually reveal. So to go back to the managerial and consulting context, here is the example of which roles can be identified using the tools of network analysis. So if you have the network of connections between employees, you can identify opinion leaders, communication brokers, experts, advisors, and also people who can reduce the stress within the team, who might sometimes call detoxifiers. And this is just few examples. And knowing these roles might be super important when undertaking managerial decisions. For example, if you know who is who, you can make the best choices when choosing people for different programs, like mentoring programs or adaptation programs. You can also make the best decision if someone is leaving an organization who might be the first candidate for replacement. You can also support transformation projects if you know more efficiently, if you know who's who. Let me give the example. So the picture you see here, actually, that's Kubler-Ross model, which shows what stages usually one person goes through when faced with some stress. But it was also shown that more or less the same happens with the team during some transformation projects. Usually people are not super happy with changes within organizations. So the first, after the shock of, okay, we have to go through that, the denial comes, then people get angry because we have to adapt to that, etc. And then we go down to depression, and hopefully at some point in time, we will integrate this new order and adopt new procedures, etc. But this way, sorry?
We had some pause. We were not sure if it was interruption on our side or on your side. But now we can see you and hear you, so all is well.
All is well. So do you see the slide with applications and the Kubler-Ross model of transformation?
Yes, everything is fine. And people are responding that there is no interruption. So my apologies, it was our side.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. In any case, thank you for monitoring the chat and for giving me this information. So this process of transformation does not always go so smoothly. We know that sometimes during difficult transformation projects people live, many of the transformation projects are just unsuccessful and a lot of money being spent sometimes on nothing. So how can we support this? If you know who's who, you know whom to address at every stage of the process. Like in the very beginning, you just need to announce the project. You need to make everyone aware of the change. So at this point, we need connectors and we need brokers just to spread the information in the whole along the organization. And also we need their support, especially support of the most informally influential people. So that's for the very beginning. And then, for example, when we come to the depression point, when so many people get disappointed and tired with the things they have to adapt to, we need whom I call detoxifiers. We need to know whom we should ask for support and first of all, support them so that they can help others. So this is just few examples of applications of knowledge of the key roles that can be identified within the network. Now I will talk a bit about the structure, the properties of the whole network. And the first property is actually connectivity. We are all connected geographically, informationally, genetically, by means of knowing each other, etc. By means of being exposed to the same information, etc. So it was shown that it is actually very easy in our social world to get connected. And to give you some illustration, how do you think? Just imagine a network, not just a network, just 100 nodes, yet not connected to each other. And if we start creating links randomly, how many links do we need on average per node to make the whole network connected? Just give me any guesses. If you need to connect 100 nodes, how many links per node do you need to create a connected network so that there is a path from anyone to anyone? May you just give me any guesses in the chat? Maybe you need 3 links per node on average, or what's your, okay, I see 99. I mean, I'm talking about, I'm talking about average number per node. So maybe that's 99, but probably less than that because some might 10, 2, 4, thank you. I start seeing your responses, 3. Okay. Okay, so answers are really diverse. 4, kids, okay, get programmed from TV and video games. I know they didn't. Okay, that's absolutely true. But now I'm just talking about the average number of connections, if connections are created randomly. And the surprising answer to that is that on average, we need just 1 link per node to create at least a giant component, at least a component that will connect most of the most of the nodes within the network. So we get connected really, really easily. And maybe we do not recognize that in our everyday life. But there is a path basically from everyone to everyone within the network. To give another illustration of how easy and natural it is, I was thinking one. Of course, I've guessed that. Yeah. To give another illustration, if there is 100 person and they just start talking to each other just in pairs, and let's say they are giving small talks to each other for 10 minutes. After 30 minutes, on average, everyone gets connected to everyone. So if I reduce 10 minutes to 1 minute small talk, in 3 minutes, I will connect 100 people, although they were talking to each other just in pairs. This is quite surprising, I guess. So connectedness is a very natural property of networks. And why is that important? So let me give you some idea of why it is important. First of all, emotions are spread in the network. How do you think if you have a friend and your friend is happy, how much it influences you? Okay, maybe too many questions. It influences you on average by 15%. I mean, on average, having a happy friend increases one's chances of experiencing happiness by 15%, which is probably not surprising. I mean, obviously we're influenced by our friends and we influence our friends. But the network effect goes further than that. Having friend of a friend who is happy influences, I mean, not necessarily influence. We don't know what is the direction of connections here. Not always we know that. But on average, it increases chances of one to be happy by 10%, which is quite interesting because, you know, we might not be really strongly connected to a person who is friend of your friend. But it goes even further than that. It was shown that there is statistically significant relation to a friend whose happiness increases your chances of experiencing happiness by on average 6%. Well, I was really surprised when I learned about that because friend of a friend is someone whom you might not know. And still there is some kind of significant relationship to that person. And to show you that this is indeed a significant relationship, I would compare that to a connection of happiness and money. It was in one of the studies, it was shown that additional $14,000 given to a person contributes to the chance of happiness just 2%. Well, happiness of some person whom you might not know, who is friend of your friend, is connected to a happiness 3 times stronger than a significant amount of money. So this is why, before I proceed to that, this is why connectedness has very important role in our social life. But it is not only emotions that spread in the network. It is also behavior, health condition, our opportunities in personal and professional life. So if you want more examples, I'm giving those in the business analytics diversity of applications course on Coursera, which will soon be launched. But what I wanted you to show that we are all connected, and this has many implications in our everyday life. Another property is the following. Our social world is small. The question is how small it is. What you see here, actually, this is not a social network example, but what you see here is a picture of internet. Basically, it was measured maybe some 20 years ago, but what you see is the connection between routers. About 23 routers connected to each other. So how do you think, what is the average distance within this network? Again, I'm asking for your opinion. So how do you think, what is the average distance between any node and any other node within this network? Any guesses? But remember, we have 23,000 nodes here. 0. Well, 0 means that this is just the same node. 3.5, 1, Thank you. The total number of nodes, 23,000, probably. Well, it's just like the path through everyone. I'm talking about the average number of nodes that you need to pass through to reach everyone to everyone. Thank you, 6. So we have some really different options. Thank you so much. So the answer to that question is less than 4. It's something like 3.8. So the distance between every node and every other node within this network on average is about 4, which is quite surprising because we have 23,000 routers here. This turns out to be a general property of networks. This idea has become popular with the name of 6 degrees of separation. So in one early study, it was shown that on average, everyone is connected to everyone by on average 6 handshakes. This was reproduced in different studies. And indeed, in many networks, not only social networks, we observe very small distances. And so we can easily connect to other people, even in very distant part of the network. So we are connected, and we are connected by very small distances. And the effect of this was especially very, we really realized the effect of this connectedness probably last year, when we saw how short time was it took for the virus to spread all over the world, because probably it takes just 6 transmissions to be transmitted to basically everyone in this world. So connectedness and small world are 2 properties. But another property is that in every network, if it's self-organized, we see that there are some nodes which have unprecedentedly high power and influence, at least in terms of the number of connections. We call these nodes hubs or influencers or connectors, depending on the context. And basically, the visualization you see here is the visualization of the transport network. It's the network of air connection between different cities. And you see that some of the dots are really bigger than others. That's because they have more connections than others. So in virtually every network, you would find hubs who are nodes which are connected to a significant proportion of all other nodes. And that's very important, because recall what I told about the emotions being spread across the network. And we've seen that everyone is connected to everyone by very short distances. And also we have hubs who are connected to a significant proportion of other nodes in the network. And now imagine yourself in the beginning of pandemic in some organization, and your hub, let's say some informal leader within the organization, is just panicking, having no idea of how to proceed with the business and what will happen tomorrow. And things like that. Maybe this is not the most influential person in terms of formal power, but if your informal leader is in panic, basically this means that everyone will be in panic really very soon. So in the managerial context, it's very, very important to know your hubs and take care of their emotional state, and take care and really make sure that they share the corporate culture, and that they are loyal to the organization, because they are going to have unprecedented power and influence on all employees within the network. This is just one example, which is very close to my heart. And this is a very network example of a hub. A hub in the scientific network, Paul Erdős, who played a super important role, mathematician who played a very important role in the emergence of network science. So why is he a hub? Because he had more than 1,500 publications and more than 500 co-authors. So it was so influential that even the Erdős number idea became popular. This is the number of co-authorships which separates an author from Erdős. For example, having Erdős number of 2, it means that you were a co-author of someone who co-authored with Erdős. So you might also think of other hubs that you know. It might be cities in the transport network, it might be people within the network, it might be websites which are connected to many other websites. Okay, why hubs are important? I told about the influence on the emotional state of employees, but it's also super important to know your hubs and to, I don't know, involve your hubs when undertaking a transformation within your organization. Because as you know, that transformation in the organization comes through several stages. So in the beginning, sorry, I was trying to put some attention for a chat, but there is no way I can do that. So I will ask Valentina to take a look on the chat. And if something is super important for me, if I should just stop and answer the question, just let me know, because
yes, of course I will. Okay. I will.
So hubs are very important for innovation. You might know there is a diffusion of innovation theory, which explains that people are just different and they have different tendency to adopt innovation. And the first to react are innovators. They are very eager to try something new, but their proportion in the population is very small. Then come early adopters. They usually get ideas from innovators, but they usually are not those who try themselves toward the first. So they represent something like 13.5% of the whole population. And then the idea is transmitted to the early majority, to the late majority, and then we get to the laggers. So the people who are the last to adopt innovation. Again, there is a relatively small percent of those people. But this is in theory, like this process is not smooth, as I mentioned earlier, because people do not have equal influence in the network. Let's assume that your hub is very resistant to some transformation project or some innovation. Most probably the innovation project will not even start because people will just be against that, being influenced by his or her opinion of the hub. So it is important, what is the opinion of your hubs? What is the spreading rate of innovation? Like, okay, people might be connected, but will they necessarily share the information about the this innovation idea? And it also, the speed of transformation will depend on the density of the network. So this is one more example of how networks can help us understand what's happening in the organization and to manage this process. The next property, I believe it's property number 4, of the network is that networks are usually clustered. The visualization that you see here is the same network that I showed you in the very beginning, where Gabriela was an absolute champion, a very central person here on the left. But if you look at this network from different perspectives, you see that there are tightly connected groups within this network, like clusters, and there are many connections within the clusters and fewer connections between them. And this is a very typical property. This is a very typical situation in the network. Usually we have subgroups of friends who communicate to each other regularly and they share all the information, etc. But there are very few links between people. There are very few people who would make friends with people from different clusters. Okay, those people are interested in jazz, but those people are interested in programming. So usually there are very few small social worlds, clusters within which you will be involved. And this is connected to another important property of network, is that there are some properties that actually drive our inclination to connect to other people. And this property is called hemophily. Usually, I mean, the property to connect to others similar to us is called hemophily. We tend to be connected to those alike. And there are basically two explanations to that. But before I explain them, I will just give you some idea of what is shown in this picture. This is actually the friendship network of school kids from one of the studies. And as you can see, most of the nodes on the right are white, and most of the nodes on the left are white, and on the right they're dark. And the color here denotes race. So unfortunately, we see that the network is very clustered, and white kids tend to be connected to white kids, and black tend to be connected to black kids. Hopefully, this segregation is not that severe now, but we do know that this problem exists. So here, school kids tend to be connected to other school kids based on their race. But this property has shown to be present with many other, not only because of race, because of language, culture, background, gender, etc. So there are two explanations to that property. One is that we just like those who are similar to us. It is easier for us to understand them. They might share the same interests, so there is so much to share with them, and it just comes easier. But the other explanation is, let's say, external, it's structural, is that within the network, it might be really difficult to approach someone who is very different to you. So there are two explanations, the agent-based explanation, the structure-based explanation. There are many forces that drive us to the connections to those alike. Okay, this was a short introduction, basically, of what properties we have in the network, how we can measure different properties, and here are some applications of that. You can optimize the structure to boost efficiency. For example, we know that there are optimal number of connections within the organization. So you can look at that. As I've mentioned, you can support innovation projects by analyzing the structure of network. And when I talked about the hubs and their role in innovation, this is just one example. If you're interested, I can tell you more about that. Also, you can evaluate different employees and to see your champions and see those who are poor performance based on their social connections. Conflict management is another example. Actually, my master's thesis was devoted to predicting conflict based on network structure between employees. And there is significant proportion of conflicts can be explained, of conflicts can be explained just by this structured network. And it not only allows you to predict conflict if you don't measure this, but also it allows you to come up with the ideas of how to do with that, because you can see the reasons behind this. Internal mobility, just another example. If someone is leaving the organization and you need to find the replacement, network analysis may really help with you. M&A, mergers and acquisitions, project support, retention management. So there are many, many examples. If you're interested in any of those, just let me know and I'll pay more attention to that. And let me finish with the following. So we know that properties of nodes are important. We know that background, education, experience of employees is of crucial importance to the organization. But we have a very, very good illustration of the role of structure from natural sciences. We know that carbon can take two different forms, graphite and diamond, which has absolutely different properties. And the reasons behind this different is the structure. So my message is that structure of connections between employees is of the same importance. And you should measure your networks. You should know how to let's say, diagnose your organization using network analysis. This is a very powerful tool for a manager. So thank you so much. This is everything that I wanted to say, but if you have any questions, I'm very open to answer those. Let me just stop sharing. Yeah, is there anything I should answer to?
There have been some comments, but no questions that required your attention. I could say, while our attendees are thinking, I could say a few things about the program and the university, because today, unlike some other presentations where we started with introducing the program and we talked about the program, we didn't talk about it a whole lot. So here's a question, Lisa, for you about the hubs. So if you could explain that.
Okay, a hub is a node within the network which is connected to a significant proportion to all other nodes. So in one of the illustrations, I showed you the picture of internet measured at some point in time. There is a node there, the router, which is connected to 12% of all other nodes within the network. So this is just very, very connected node. And due to that property, it has really important influence on all the network, on the whole network. Can you recommend a book to read on this topic? Yeah, I would be happy to. So it just depends on the focus that you have. But there is a very good science popular book by Albert Laszlo Barabashi, which is called Connected, I believe. This is a very good introduction to network science, but it is just, to give you many examples. It is a science popular book. But if you're interested in network science as per se, then I would suggest probably two books. I don't know, Network Science by Laszlo Barabashi, and also Networks by Mark Newman. There is also a book by Estrada. So actually, yeah, we have people who are listening to us who also authored great books. Doing social network research, network-based research design for social. Thank you so much. There are, Valentina is also posting suggestions. So yeah, basically that's it. There are many books that I might recommend, but probably Connected is the first one to start with, just to get the ideas. Recommend some literature on, or articles with cases of using SNA in applied studies. Well, I'm not sure about the book, which would be devoted to application of network analysis to business, but there are many publications to that. Frankly speaking, there are many articles that come to my mind, but I'm not sure that I just can't. I just can social networking methods and applications. Yeah. There is a link to the review article of different applications. But sorry, I was not prepared to recommend you some articles. There are many, but probably it will be too specific, let's say. Social network analysis for organizations. Thank you so much. Yeah, I see. I guess that's Anna posting some links. Thank you. Something else? If you're interested, I can also share my experiences of studying in MASNA.
Lisa, there was a question from Michael Murphy. How do you set about doing a business network diagnostic? I think this is something you can talk about because that was a subject of your study at one point.
So am I right that the question is what exactly can we do using network analysis for business management, right?
I think the question that it sounds like, how do you set up about doing a business network diagnostic? So I think this is a diagnostic of a business network. Obviously, it depends on the purpose, but how would you perform a diagnostic using network analysis? That's how I understand the question.
Okay, so the first thing is to measure the network. And there are two ways of doing that. Basically, you can either conduct a survey and ask people who do you communicate with whom, and this is what I was doing many times. Like, you come to the organization and you conduct a survey. Usually this is an online survey, and it also makes sense to first have the list of all employees so that people can easily navigate within the list and choose those with whom they're connected to. Or you can base your network measurements on the digital trace. So if you can measure, let's say, email communications or communications in some corporate platform like Bitrix or something like that, this is then another type of network. And sometimes these two sources are used in combination. So this is the first step, just measure your network. And then what kind of diagnostic method you have? So the first, maybe the simplest one, is to look at the number of connections between employees, because there are some limits on how much information, social information, we can process. And there are basically two numbers here. You should not have more than 7 ± 2 tight connections. If you have more than 9 subordinates or more than 9 close working partners, that's a problem, because it was shown that it won't take long for such an employee to become just overwhelmed. And another important number is about 150 or up to 20. That's the overall number of people that our brain is adopted to, bear in mind. So you can't actually remember more than 200 people by name and taking into account important context information, at least on average. That's the limitation of our cognitive ability. That's what is known as Dunbar's number. So that's the first thing. And I've seen, and that's statistically, that's always happened. I've seen employees who had more than this number of connections. That's one kind of diagnosis. Another thing is to measure roles and to compare the social roles played by employees to their formal positions. Sometimes we see very important cases of, they just do not correspond to each other. Some employees with high positions might be very poor as leaders. And this is an important indicator. But actually, if you're interested in that, I provide enough examples in the business analytics course on Coursera. If you're interested in something else specifically, just let me know. There are, for example, some specific requirements, specific conditions that we would like to have to promote innovation. So the optimal structure really depends on the goal you're trying to achieve within your network.
There are a couple more questions. One says, what might be the applications of social network analysis to public policy development sector or theory of change? And that's a big question.
Well, yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, there are many studies actually within the Oxford Internet Institute, to which I belong, because you can study social movements using network analysis, and there are many actually studies devoted to that. Public policy. Yeah, I'm not sure whether it directly answers your question, but for example, there are studies of misinformation in social media, and we know what are the mechanisms, we know how to identify that, and using this, you can prevent the spread of fake news, for example. This may be very important aspect, I believe. I don't know. Hopefully that answers your question. That's good.
Thanks, Lisa. There are actually many excellent questions. And here's another one. That one is in chat as opposed to Q&A. Can network analysis be used to describe a general path of patients during an encounter? What happens to the patients, drugs, procedures, medication, diagnostics, facilities? What are the common paths of treatment over many patients and encounters?
Speaking, I don't see the direct relation to what I can provide examples of how networks can be applied in medicine, but I'm not quite sure that I understand the context of this question. Where exactly the question?
Oh, actually, that's the reason why I've even asked it out loud. It's an excellent question because there was a time when Professor Wasserman just opened our laboratory, when he was approached by a medical facility asking to conduct a study, technically as a network study. And Professor Wasserman said that when it comes to patient and hospital interaction or patient treatment plan, very few problems are network problems. So there could be a network of hospitals, there could be a network of doctors and nurses. So of course we can make networks there. But when it comes to each specific person moving through a hospital or treatment facility, the problem technically is so unique that it's difficult, if not impossible, to build a network. So lots of problems, lots of medical problems are not network problems. Obviously, spread of the virus is, and some similar contagion problems are network problems. But a general path of patients during an encounter can be described simply by what is called a path diagram. It does not need to be a network because there is really no network components there, because for there to be a network, as Lisa described, there has to be nodes and connections between them. So the patient is alone, in their misery, moving through the hospital. So it's really not a very network problem.
Absolutely. So network analysis is not a universal approach. It's very specific and it has its limitation, but just in some cases, it provides a unique perspective which cannot be, answers the question which cannot be addressed otherwise, but not always, absolutely not. There was an interesting discussion during the pandemic of who should be vaccinated first. I really liked this discussion. And for example, it would be really reasonable to vaccinate young people first, because they are those who are going to spread the virus. They are the most active, although they're the least vulnerable. So one of the arguments would be, please first vaccinate the youngest so that they stop the spread. But on the other hand, some people are more vulnerable, although they are not probable to be the drivers of the pandemic. So yeah, there was a very interesting discussion about that recently.
Lisa, there is in the chat, there is a question from Roberto Contreras. So if you scroll up a little bit, I think it would help that you read it yourself, because it starts with words, great presentation, Dr. Chernenko, very enlightening.
Yeah, I'm not doctor yet.
But there are two questions. In the fields of study, how networks have been applied to IT. And I think there is a question asking you about your contact information, LinkedIn, for instance, to exchange ideas, as this topic might have great potential in IT areas and business relations.
Great. I guess just.
Are you just going to pass the business card? No.
So I just wonder, is it impossible to answer one? Well, it's possible, I guess.
No, you can answer the question. Yes, you can answer the question yourself. Just type it in.
Okay, I will reply directly to Roberto. And also, when we talk about applications to IT, servers, applications, failure, absolutely. This is super, super relevant to the IT infrastructure. This is not exactly what I'm working on, but there is a large branch of knowledge, which in social network analysis, network science, that is devoted to that. And absolutely, we can build a network in such a way that it would be most, I'm missing some words, sorry, like stable, so that even if some, for example, routers fail, the connection is still there. And there is a lot to learn about that from network science. Yeah, I will just answer Roberto like personal.
Well, if you don't mind, you are welcome to share your contact information, especially if it's a LinkedIn connection, with everyone who is attending, because quite a few people contact us through social media, especially LinkedIn, which is a professional network, after these webinars. So feel free to answer to everyone, I suppose. Any other questions?
Let me just, so yeah, I guess that this is my LinkedIn, and I can also share my email, I guess, at least the official, I mean, the formal one. Any other questions?
Well, thanks. Well, there's another question. Is it possible to intercept P2P network or end-to-end encrypted channels? Well, I suppose it's possible to intercept everything if you have strong enough hacking mechanism. So I would say that it just depends on how strong it is. I don't know if Lisa has a different answer. And again, for our attendees, I will repeat the information about our program. Offline, online consultations, and general about HSC admissions. And we have been at this for about an hour, which is how we normally take, how long we normally take. If you have additional questions for Ms. Chernenko or anyone, so you have your contact information and contact information for the program. At this point, I would love to thank everyone for being here, and especially Ms. Chernenko for sharing her story all the way from Oxford with us, and her experience with networks. And we hope to see you all at our future webinars. Thanks a lot for spending your morning, evening, or whatever time of the day it is in your time zone with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I actually failed to read everything that was written in the in the chat and the Q&A session, but hopefully, if you really need me, you know where to find me.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa.
Bye-bye.